Hello everybody. Today I can prepare for my equations of lines and circles test by practicing. So let's get right to it. It's asking for the equation of a line. Well, the equation of a line is y minus y1 equals x minus x1. And you need to know that parallel has the same slope. Perpendicular lines have negative reciprocal slopes. So the slope of my line is going to be the negative reciprocal of this. So the negative reciprocal means flip it and negate it. The slope of my line is going to be negative 5/3. Perpendicular lines have negative reciprocal slopes, so I do the negative reciprocal of that slope. x1, y1 are the coordinates of the point that it passes through. x1, y1 is 3 and negative 6. And now I pop it into point slope formula. Y is y. Minus means change the sign. I'm changing the sign of y1. That's plus 6. M is negative 5/3. Minus x1 is minus 3. Now, half the time I'm done. But if I look at the choices, they're not in that form. So now I might have to distribute. And I solely y. Negative 5/3 times x is negative 5/3 x. Negative 5/3 times negative 3 is a calculator if you need to. There it is. It's positive 5. And isolate y. Minus 6 minus 6. Y equals negative 5/3 x minus 1. Negative 5/3 x minus 1. There it is. Two things here. The equation of a line, y minus y1 equals mx minus x1. And you need to know that parallel lines have the same slope. Perpendicular lines have negative reciprocal slopes. We've got another one now. In a way it's easier, in a way it's not. Again, it wants the equation of a line, y minus y1 equals mx minus x1. There's your x1, y1. Now it's perpendicular, so again, perpendicular lines have negative reciprocal slopes. But I don't know the slope because y is not by itself. So I have to get y by itself, which shouldn't be a big deal. Add 3x to both sides. Add 3x to both sides. 2y equals 3x plus 10. Divide by 2, divide by 2, y equals 3/2 x plus 5. If it doesn't divide nicely, we'll leave it as a fraction. So the slope of this line is 3/2. So the slope of my perpendicular line, the negative reciprocal of that, is negative 2/3. x1 is 6, y1 is 8. I pop it into point slope. Minus y1 means change the sign of y1. That's minus 8. M is negative 2/3. X minus 6. The choices are in that form. I look for it, and there it is. All right, you'll have two questions on this. One will be in point slope form. This one is called slope intercept form, y equals mx plus b. That's it. Practice it. Get it right. Number 5, line dilations parallel keep the slope. No matter what, when you're dilating a line, you keep the slope. Origin, multiply scale factor and b. If it's centered at the origin, you're multiplying the scale factor in b. The slope is 1/2. The y-intercept is negative 4. That's it. If it's centered at the origin, you multiply the scale factor in b. If it's centered not at the origin, then not origin, same line. If it's centered not at the origin, it is the same line. What you should do to show that the concept is that if the center of dilation is on the line, the equation is the same line, but the cheat is no matter what, the slope stays the same. If it's centered at the origin, you're multiplying the scale factor in b. If the center of dilation is anything else, the equation is the same exact thing. Which brings us to number 9. Line dilation, parallel, keep the slope. It doesn't tell me what the scale factor is. So if it doesn't tell me what the scale factor is, I don't know. I can't tell you the exact equation of the line, but I do know that it's parallel, which means the slope has to be the same. So this has a slope of 2. So my answer must have a slope of 2. So I need to go through all the choices and get y by itself and see which one has a slope of 2. If I take a look at choice 1 and I get y by itself, it has a slope of 2. It's parallel. That's your answer. If it doesn't tell you the center of dilation and or the scale factor, I can't write the exact equation. All I know if the line is being dilated is that it has the same slope, so I find the choice that has the same slope. That brings us to circles. It's all about the center and the radius. So if I'm kind of working backwards here, if I look at this graph, my center is 5, 2, and my radius is 1, 2, 3, 4. So I know I have to negate the radius to determine what goes inside the parentheses. So it should be an x minus 5 and a y minus 2. So those are out. And the right-hand side is the radius squared. So 4 squared is 16. That's your answer. If you work backwards, we're probably more comfortable working backwards. If I look at choice 1 here, the center, the x-coordinate of the center is positive 5, the y-coordinate is positive 2, and the radius is the square root of the right-hand side. And yes, this has a center of 5, 2, and a radius of 4. So you'll have one of those in your test. You'll have to graph a circle. So I need to state the center. The center, I negate what's in the parentheses. So the x-coordinate's positive 4, the y-coordinate's negative 1. The radius is the square root of the right-hand side. The square root of 9 is 3. So I plot the center, 4, negative 1. And I go the radius in all 4 directions. So I go 1, 2, 3 to the right, 1, 2, 3 to the left, 1, 2, 3 up, 1, 2, 3 down, and I draw my circle. Find the center and radius, negate what's in the parentheses for the center, square root of the right-hand side for the radius, plot the center, count the radius in all 4 directions. You'll have one of those, which brings us to completing the square with circles. So I'm going to do this in 2 different ways. I'm going to do it algebraically, and then I'm going to do it using the Conics app. You will have one where you can get full credit using the Conics app, and you'll have one where you can't get full credit using the Conics app. So let's do it by hand first using the completing the square method. I need to get the constant to the other side. I'm going to write the x's together. So I have x squared minus 2x plus y squared plus 6y equals 15 over 4. And now it's time to complete the square. I add my big blank square to both sides for the x's and for the y's. So I'm going to match that big blank black square and the big blank blue square. And to determine what goes inside, I do b over 2 squared. So I've got negative 2 over 2 squared is 1. And I've got 6 over 2 squared is 9. So that's 1. And that's 9. Now I factor the trinomial, it's always the same factor written twice, and it's always the square root of that, and it's always the first sign, x minus 1, x minus 1. For the y's, y plus 3, y plus 3. The right-hand side, combine. Since there's a fraction, I would just use the calculator. 15 over 4 plus 1 plus 9 is 55 over 4. I'm sorry, I just realized there was a small typo. This was supposed to be plus, so this was minus, so negative 15 over 4. Plus 1 plus 9 is 25 over 4. And now I rewrite as a binomial squared, x minus 1 squared, y plus 3 squared, plus equals 25 over 4. And now that I got to this point, the center, just like before, I negate what's in the parentheses, 1 comma negative 3. The radius is the square root of the right-hand side. And don't be messed up by the fraction. Just take the square root of the top and take the square root of the bottom, which is 5 over 2. 1 negative 3, 5 over 2. Your answer is choice 4. Now, if I'm doing this with the Conics app, which will, multiple choice will definitely work 100% of the time. There's a little twist, which we'll talk about. So the original problem should have been plus. So let's do with the Conics app now. So if I go to apps, I go to Conics, option 4 on mine. I go to circle. It's in option 2's form, the original problem. So I can choose 2 or scroll down. A is what's in front of x squared and y squared. That's 1. It's always 1. B is what's in front of the x. That's negative 2. C is what's in front of the y. That's 6. D, be careful with D. It says plus D equals 0. So I need it to be equal to 0. In this case, the original problem was equal to 0. So D is 15 over 4. You may need to move that value over. And then once I have that, alpha enter, alpha solve, and it tells you your center and your radius. And if it gives it to you as a decimal, you just need to match that decimal up with the fraction. I got 2.5. 5 over 2 is 2.5. Same thing with a radical. If it gives you a decimal, it could be a radical. Just type in the radicals. However, if it's open response and it's a weird decimal that was supposed to be a radical, then this wouldn't work. You get partial credit, but to get full credit 100% of the time, use your completing the square method. Conics will most likely get you all your points, but I'm telling you right now, it will not get you all your points on your test question. So let me just show you this one right here, how this would work on the Conics app. Apps, Conics, circle 2. A is always 1, B is negative 16, C is 6, D, it is equal to 0, so 53 is good. Alpha, enter. My center is 8, negative 3, so that one's fine. 8, negative 3, 8, negative 3, so those are out. And now my radius is 4.4721. That's definitely not 20. And if I go to my calculator and I type in 2 radical 5, you'll see that it gives me that 4.4721. So if it's multiple choice, that's not a big deal. But if it is open response, the only way to get that 2 radical 5 would be to do the completing the square process. So let's move on. Now we've got some review, some old topics. Very, 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 very important. I see a right triangle. There's an angle involved. So, Toa. HAO. I've got O and H. That's sine. Sine theta equals O over H. Theta is X. O is 17. H is 28. I want X to get rid of sine. To find an angle, I do inverse. So it's inverse sine of both sides. I have X equals inverse sine of 17 over 28. I go to my calculator. I make sure I'm in degree mode. And I do inverse sine of 17 over 28. And to the nearest, I have no idea what I said, probably nearest 10th, 37.4. If I said this around to something different, I apologize. So you will have one of those, and I've mentioned it before, if you can get to this point, if you can get to sine x equals 17 over 28, and for whatever reason you can't finish it off, you could always use the equation solver, math up, numeric solver, sine x 17 over 28, solve, and you'll get your answer. I prefer you do it by hand, but the important thing is get your points. And I got another review question here. You need to recognize this picture. This is Hill-Safs. Put an X on what you're trying to find. You need to know this is H, L, L, A, S, S. If there's an L involved, it's Hills. So it's H over L equals L over S. H is this whole bottom part. That's 12 over L is X equals L is X over S is 2. X times X is X squared. 12 times 2 is 24. Square root. Two options. Option 1, you reduce the radical. Yeah, don't feel too confident in that. Option 2, I have radical 24. So I go radical 24. Radical 24. I get that decimal. I go to each choice. Is 2 radical 2 that decimal? No. Is 2 radical 5 that decimal? No. Is 2 radical 6 that decimal? Yeah. That's your answer, choice 3. And if you are doing it algebraically, you're looking for a perfect square that goes into 24, 4. 4 and 6 takes the square root of the perfect square. Non-perfect square comes down. Did I put anything else on your review here? It's kind of a short unit. Yep, we got our bow tie problems. Looks like a bow tie. And for your bow tie problems, the corresponding sides are on the same diagonal. So 2 and 3 corresponds. X and 6 correspond. I always go left over right, left over right. Again, for the bow tie problems, the sides that are on the same diagonal are the sides that correspond. Cross multiply and solve. 2 and 6 is 12. 3 and x is 3x. Dividing by 3, x equals 4. So you will have a bow tie problem on your test as well. Again, a commonly asked Regents question. It's really not hard. And is that it? That's it. So your 3 review questions, bow tie problems, the corresponding sides are on the same diagonal. Hill-Safs, SOHCAHTOA, and then equations of circles. You have to be able to put it into center radius form using either the Conics app or completing the square. Completing the square will work 100% of the time. Conics will work usually. Conics will not get you all 4 points on your 2 2-point questions. Completing the square will. To graph the circle, state the center and the radius. by negating what's in the parentheses for the center, square root of the right-hand side for the radius, plot the center, count the radius in all 4 directions. Same type of thing, but in a multiple choice version. Line dilations, parallel, keep the slope. If it doesn't say the center and or scale factor, all we know is that it's parallel, that the slope is the same, so we have to find which one has the same slope by getting y by itself. Otherwise, for line dilations, the cheat, if it's centered at the origin, multiply the scale factor in b. If it's not the origin, it's the same thing. Equations of a line through a point, y minus y1 equals m. X minus x1 might have to distribute, and isolate y. And you need to know parallel has the same slope. Perpendicular lines have negative reciprocal slopes. And remember, when you're subbing into this formula, minus means change the sign. Change the sign of x1 and y1. Not that many topics. Practice, get them right. Big unit for the regions, so make sure you're able to do it. Goodbye.